I don't know how many times I've heard from owners who've come over to us that, they haven't received any money in forever. I have one horror story of a company, or not a company, but about 10 owners, I believe it was, that came over to us about 15 years ago. And they were being told by a very small property manager who wasn't even licensed in the state. So she was doing it illegally. But she was telling all of these owners that their properties were vacant. And that's why they hadn't received any money for 4 or 5 months. The properties were vacant. One of the owners happened to come out to view what was going on. And in fact, they were not vacant. They were occupied. And the owner the property manager owner had walked away with, I think it was nearly $100,000 in cash.
Welcome to The Breakthrough with Stephen Husted, the show that takes you behind the scenes with successful entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and other movers and shakers in the business world. In each episode, we'll sit down with our guests to explore their personal and professional journeys, including the challenges they faced, the breakthrough moments that propelled them to success, and the strategies and the tactics they use to get there. Get inspired by new ideas and strategies and get to know our guests on a deeper level. Join us for candid conversations, powerful insights, and plenty of breakthrough moments. Please help us grow by subscribing and sharing the podcast, and welcome to the show. All right, Jim. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it myself.
Yeah, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago. I was talking to my assistant and one of my partners, and I was telling them how much of a relief I've had in dealing with my property management out in Kansas City from what I was going through for the years prior. And it just dawned on me that, before I felt like I was the property manager and I was just micromanaging them and always trying to understand, the owner statement or the communication with the tenants, just all these different things. And all it was on my brain. And, fast forward to now, I think you guys have been managing our properties probably about a year, maybe a year and a half.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think about a year.
And you took us over from another property management company that grew too fast and had some issues there from what I remember. Is that true?
I believe so. Yeah. And I've actually been down that road myself. So
really, is that so? Why don't we just go into it from there? What happens with property managers that they scale too big? And is it a problem that they don't have systems and processes in place to take on all the new clients?
Yes.
That's the biggest part of it.
The short answer is yes. That's the problem. And I have experienced probably every problem that you can imagine, and our system continues to evolve every day. We've never got it figured out. We don't take the approach that we've ever got it figured out. Yeah. But what happens with management companies, and speaking personally, that happened to us over 20 years ago, was you get to a point when you're trying to build your management business that you want to scale. You need to scale in order, if you're going to be in the business, you need to scale in order to provide customers. And by the way, we have two sets of customers the way we look at it, tenants and the owners. So we're right in the middle. A bad spot to be in sometimes, but the fact that we have two sets of customers, that the owners and the tenants. So you need to scale in order to provide each of those customers the type of service that each of them deserve. And they all have different needs. The tenants obviously have different needs than the owners. So the problem is you're trying to run as fast as you can to scale that business and be able to provide the types of personnel resources, the technological resources that are needed in order to provide you those services. And you have to have enough business to be able to pay all that, to pay for the assistance. I mean, I have the luxury right now as I have divisional managers in each of our divisions that are high-end managers that are in charge of the entire system. under them. They have a layer of managers that help them. I have an assistant myself that helps me. So I have that luxury now versus 20 years ago, I didn't. It was just me and my wife, and I was a paramedic by trade, so that was my full-time job. And I did that for 20 years from the time I was 21 years old. So I was trying to grow this business. My wife and I, she would work on it during the day. I would work on it on my days off. And it was literally a 7-day-a-week job in order to provide the level of service that we needed to provide. And we stumbled a lot along the way, to be perfectly honest about it. It just happened, and luckily we grew through it. We had a lot of dedicated owners that stuck with us. I think they realized we had the ethics and morals of what we were trying to do. And that's a large part of the property management business itself, is being ethical and having that type of business sense to provide the owners what they want.
Ethical in what way?
Just being honest about what you're doing. Number one, handling their money ethically and honestly.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I've heard from owners who've come over to us that they haven't received any money in forever. I have one horror story of a company, or not a company, but about 10 owners, I believe it was, that came over to us about 15 years ago. And they were being told by a very small property manager who wasn't even licensed in the state. So she was doing it illegally. But she was telling all of these owners that their properties were vacant. And that's why they hadn't received any money for 4 or 5 months. The properties were vacant. One of the owners happened to come out to view what was going on. And in fact, they were not vacant. They were occupied. And the owner the property manager owner had walked away with, I think it was nearly $100,000 in cash. It was
I've heard about this before.
Situation, and I hear it all the time. Not to that degree, I don't hear it, but I do hear it all the time, to where they just either can't reach a manager, nobody will return a call, nobody will return an email, and that's what I'm referring to. Is, I mean, I work for you. And we take that very, very seriously. Customer service is very important to us. And that's not to say that we're perfect. I mean, we stumble along the way. And
sure, but there's a big difference. I told you, and I've told everybody on your team that I communicate with, like Sierra. I go, we went from non-communication to you guys over-communicate on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it's great. And it's just the follow-up too is just everything is lined up correctly. If there's something going on with the property, I know about it. And if I'm doing something on that property with let's say my handyman or my contractor, you guys are also following up as well. So it's always this like double layer of communication,
right,
which makes things move a lot smoother. It's easy to get you guys on the phone. You send an email, we're going to get on the phone within 24 hours usually. And that just, I can't explain how much more that's made me more relaxed on dealing with my portfolio out in Kansas City, is just that level. And that's pretty much the reason why I wanted to bring you on, because it's just been a 9-day different experience. And I think a lot of people have to understand this, especially new investors that are buying properties out of state, is their property management company can make or break them. And that is like just property management and their contractor are the two that could really take them down really quick. And so I think a big part of what I've learned now is, when you start to see issues with a property manager or a contractor, is you need to cut that tie quick. And you can't really sit around and give them, more tries at making it right. You just have to move on and try to find another one until you find that correct company that works well and you feel is communicating correctly and not taking you for a ride that is not going in the right direction. I mean, that's just the truth of it for me. at least.
I agree. And, my wife, Christy, and like I said, we started this business in 87 and we talk about this all the time. We're both very intimately still involved in this company. Every one of our owners I talk to personally when they on board. I don't turf them to anybody else. I want to talk to them myself so that I can try to get an idea of what they're trying to accomplish. We have some owners who are very, very actively involved with their properties. I have others that are pretty passive. They sit back and just let us run,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good feeling because I feel like they trust us. But at the same time, I always encourage them to, hey, you need to kind of stay engaged a little bit because we are human. We can make mistakes with accounting or whatever. You enter a bill in wrong or something. So I always encourage owners to please take a look at those statements and be engaged in it because again, we're human and we can make mistakes. And I would hate for something like that to happen. But the one thing I wanted to point out is, I know for a fact what I want to accomplish for you as an owner. I know what's in my heart. I know what's in my head and what I want to do. But I'm only as good as the 50 or 60 people that we got working here. And that's why I tell every owner, you have my cell number, you got my email. I will return those calls. And I generally return my calls the same day, if not within 24 hours, most definitely, but usually the same day because I need to know what's going on. If we have a team member who is slacking for some reason, then I need to know so that we can, get things back on track. But for the most part, we've got a great group of employees that work here, and I'm very blessed to have them.
Everybody I deal with is amazing, honestly. Like I just can't say it enough. And just for the audience to know, you operate out of Kansas City, and you're now in Florida, correct? Did I
Correct.
miss any other markets? Are you in St. Louis too?
We are. We're in St. Louis. Our main home office, corporate office, is in Kansas City, actually Lee Summit, Missouri, which is a suburb of Kansas City. We also operate in Columbia, Missouri, which is in the middle of Missouri, and then in St. Louis. And we just recently opened up an operation in Panama City, Florida. We've got a divisional manager that we moved down there last week, actually. So we're
Wow.
ramping that up. So that'll get started soon.
What made you choose Florida? Like, how did that all come about?
Well, I love Florida. First of all,
Okay.
we have a home in Sarasota. That's actually our legal residence, although I'm in Kansas City quite a bit. But we got tied in with Panama City through a partnership of our sales franchise, Weichert Realtors, a franchise out of Mississippi, some partners we are working with, and they got some developers in Panama City that are developing three developments of townhouses, and they came to us and our Mississippi partners to sell those and subsequently manage those. So it's already taken off very well. The project's going to be built out in 2024 and 2025. We have quite a few sold, so we went ahead and moved a manager down there since she can work remotely as well and start building up that operation.
Yeah, that's great. And I was just thinking this while you were talking about those other markets. I was going, oh, you know what? I can pass your guys' information to because I have a couple new investors that are looking out in St. Louis. And I've just now I can pass them your way.
Right.
And then the Florida market, that's good to know too, because I think once you have some of these the pieces of the puzzle correct, it makes going into a new market a lot easier, right?
Well, and we've been but we've been very cautious about that because I've seen a lot of management companies that have grown and they were very large companies to begin with, like ourselves, but then they grew, and you can still grow too quickly. So I think I've seen a lot of those go into other markets and not fail, but not be providing the level of service that they're capable of doing because you're only as good as the people on the ground. And if you've got a bad divisional manager who doesn't have the work ethic or the ethics in general and that you have, you're going to fail. And the owners are you may not fail, but the owners are going to suffer. And I look at that as a failure. It may sound silly, but we've got over 1,000 owners we manage for. And whenever an owner cancels on us for whatever reason, unless it's a sale where somebody has sold the property, Christy and I take it to the gut. It's like a gut punch. I mean, we really take it personal. We want to know why. What did we do wrong? What can we correct? It's very personal to us.
That means you care.
Yeah, exactly. We do.
I mean, it's the same thing I go through working as an agent out in California. And there's any type of issue that's going on between a buyer or seller that I'm working with. If you're stressed over it and you're thinking about it a lot, it means you care. And that's a good thing.
That's right.
No,
that's exactly right.
If you weren't thinking about it and you didn't care, it wasn't on your mind, you probably just don't care. And that's a good. I got a question. Who trains the team that deals with the landlords?
That's a good question. We now have a lady that's been with us for going on 20 years now. Our first employee, actually, a W-2 employee. She's still with us. She is now our business development manager. So she does all the training of every single person that comes in the door. She's actually training today. So she does all that initially. That way we have consistency across the board of one way it's done.
Yeah, it's super smooth. Just every part of it. And it's interesting too, when I get part of your team on the phone, they're just really nice too. And I haven't experienced that before. And let me tell you 2 stories that are going on currently. One of them that you and I had talked about probably back in late July with one of the tenants at my properties who put their leg through that deck.
Yeah.
And, I know that that's a big issue. It can potentially be, the tenant could, actually sue me. There's all kinds of different things that could go on.
Right.
And I reached out to everybody on your team. We started talking about it. We were talking about it immediately. Now, I have a property out in Detroit that was getting a rehab done. And the contractor's subs left him. And all of a sudden, somebody gets into the property through the lockbox and is now squatting in this property and said that he was a part of he's there to do construction on the house. My property manager showed up and this guy's in the house. He's got an extension cord going from one window into the neighbor's house.
Yeah.
And there is a lack of communication between my property manager on what's going on and the next steps. They have the sheriffs go out there. It was last week on a Wednesday. And we just now heard back from them today, almost a week, on what went on. And once he comes back and tells me what's going on, the explanation's fine. We can keep moving on. But the communication should have happened that day after you left. It would have been just a quick email. Hey, here's what's going on. Keep me informed in real time, especially on serious matters. And it's just one thing after another, to the point, once again, micromanaging. When I'm thinking too much about my properties and what's going on, that's where the property management part is the issue. And so I'm, of course, looking into, the first thing I thought was, I really wish you were in that market. Please come into the Detroit market. But so those are the to the point now where I'm thinking of just selling out of that location altogether and moving them somewhere where I can take that. Really what I want to do, I don't want to focus on the property management part of it. I want to focus on building out my portfolio.
Well, that's exactly right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the bigger key.
Exactly.
Like that's what I'm hiring the property manager to do.
Well, what you're talking about is exactly what I personally talk to every one of our employees about at some point while they're working with us. Our job is to take the pressure off of the owner. If the owner, and I'm adamant about this, if an owner is emailing or calling us asking about something, there's nothing wrong with that at all. However, the representative who's getting that call needs to look at that and go, why did that owner have to call me? Why did they have to email me? Because that tells me that we're not, whatever that subject is, that we're not getting back to them in a timely manner on that particular issue. Doesn't mean it's a bad employee or anything like that. It's a learning situation. We should be reaching out to the owner long before they're reaching out to us. And what you just said is key to me. Our job is to make the properties perform for you as best we can, as everything that we have control of, so you can build the portfolio. It's a win-win situation. I win when you grow more properties. So
Yes.
it is a win for me to do that. But so many management companies look at owners and just churn them. I acquired
It's
a company.
dollars. It's money.
Exactly. I acquired a company many years ago that their direct philosophy was they didn't care what the owners felt like. There's so many owners out there that own property. If they lose one, they'll get another one. It didn't matter to them. Just churn them. And I completely disagree with that. I would much rather keep them and keep getting more and more.
Well, and you retain those landlords longer.
Absolutely. I've got owners that have been with us for, I haven't even looked, but I know of a few that have been with us for probably 15, 18 years.
Really? Wow. And you've watched them grow their portfolio.
And we watch them grow, and that's exciting to me. When I started buying property myself, I was 24 years old, didn't know what I was doing. I read a book, actually bought a cassette tape program back then. They had cassettes. With a guy named Charles Givens. I don't even know if he's in business now. But I didn't know what I was doing, and I was learning and started doing things, acquiring properties. And I love to see that today. I love to see guys and ladies who are just building their portfolio and growing something. It's exciting to see, and I love to be a part of it.
It's one of those things you can do that is always different. There's always new challenges, new strategies, new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving. It's definitely something that's not staying the same over and over and over. You're definitely having to go with the flow in different ways as far as changing how you think about the portfolio or how you deal with people and what's going on with your properties. It's just the economy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts. So if we had a new investor in the audience listening to this, what are the key things that they should be looking for in a property manager when they're looking to buy out of state? Like what are the questions they should be asking up front?
Well, one of the things that I would say is how long they've been in the business, but that's a touchy subject too, because we all have to start somewhere, right? I mean,
yes,
you don't start out of the gate being in business for 35 years. So that's hard for me, but because I would hope people back in the day wouldn't have looked at me that way. But I do think you need to look at who they are, how long they've been in business, and I would just say to talk to them. I mean, I'm just a guy that loves to talk to people, and I want to talk to them to get a sense for who they are, how they operate, what their philosophy is, and does it match my philosophy? I mean, for quite honestly, I've had owners with us before. They were great people, but for some reason we just didn't click. Doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't make me a bad person. It's just we didn't click for some reason. And you're going to find that out when you're talking to them over the phone. Do you get that warm and fuzzy feeling, that this person has my values in mind as well, and also how do they handle maintenance? There's two pieces.
This is a big one.
There's two pieces to the property management that will make or break an owner, quite frankly. And I own a lot of property still myself, and some out of state. And the property management fees themselves, by and large, are minuscule. That's a small piece of the pie. The big piece of the pie is the maintenance and how the maintenance is handled, and how the charges are. I mean, maintenance can kill an investment, if you're not careful. So I would definitely talk to the property manager on how they handle maintenance. Do they handle it in-house? Do they sub it all out? If they sub it out, do they mark up those prices? If they do mark them up, what is the markup? There's nothing necessarily wrong with them marking them up, but I think you need to go into it with your eyes open so that you know what the situation is. If somebody is a small shop on management, and there's absolutely, again, nothing wrong with that, but then they don't have the staff to do the maintenance in-house themselves, so they have to sub everything out. What does a average work order cost? What does an HVAC work order cost? What does a plumbing work order cost? They all have different costs to them. They're not going to be all the same rate. So, and then if somebody says, well, it's $100 an hour for HVAC, do you mark that up? Just so that you
Yes.
know what you can expect. I think that's the biggest thing that I see with individual owners is sometimes they go into a property and they really don't know what they were expecting
Until those maintenance
until it happens.
invoices
Yeah.
start coming, and they're like, okay.
I've had
And
owners that we've managed for. There was one in particular that we had managed for 4 or 5 years and only had one tenant. I mean, he had a run, which is a great deal to have one tenant for 4 to 5 years. But then when the tenant moved out, the place needed full paint, carpeting, that kind of thing, and he couldn't afford to do it. And I
interesting.
mean, that it goes back to this is just my philosophy on real estate, owning real estate. To me, that is a business segment, all separate from our property management. The properties that we own is its own entity. It's a business in itself, and that business has to support itself, in my view. So the way we look at it, it needs its own budget, it needs its own revenue stream, and so on and so forth.
And that revenue stream can be erratic depending on what.
Yes.
Good example, we have a duplex that you guys manage, and storms came and a tree came from the side and landed on the house.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big expense. And even though that we run numbers and have reserves and repairs, and we put a percentage per month out of our gross rents into that pot, sometimes these repairs and issues can come up that are much bigger than that, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know this until they finally start going through, some of these bigger issues on these properties.
Yeah.
But, there is one thing that you guys do different than a lot of property managers that I've come across is when you take on properties before that tenant moves in, you guys go walk the property and literally do a property inspection report.
Yeah.
And then that report gives the landlord eyes on what issues are on that report, big or small, what needs to get addressed up front so that you can have the property ready for the tenant. Some are fine, some are probably bigger that you want to get done, but at least you have a good understanding going into what's going on with your property. And a lot of people don't know that. So all of a sudden they get a tenant put in place and they got a repair this month, another repair the following month. And they're just like, wait, what's going on? But if you have that report, then you already understand what's, there could be some potential because you've got that report. And I think there's a lot of value having that in the very beginning.
Yeah, there really
appreciate you guys
is.
doing them.
Yeah, we're actually doing 16 of them today. We had a gentleman who pulled over two small apartment buildings, eight units each, and they're all vacant. And we were talking about putting them on the market. And I said, well, the first thing we got to do is get out and see these properties. We got to see what's going on with them because he didn't even know if they're ready to go or not. But so, yeah, that's the first thing is we want to see, are these properties ready to move somebody in? And it goes back to the philosophy again. I tell all of our property inspectors, I want you to inspect this from the point of view of would you live in this property? And to give that owner a picture of what you are seeing. He or she may not decide to do everything that you want them to do, and that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But our job is to give you the picture of what we see. And then you can make some decisions upon yourself, like a full paint versus a touch-up paint. You can tell us what you want us to do, but our job is to tell you what we see. But I had a situation like you talk about the tree. I had a tree on one of my properties fell down 2 weeks ago. It cost me $2,000 to get it removed. I hadn't budgeted for that, and I'm going, oh my goodness, this is terrible.
Yes. Well, and this goes back to you learn new things as you go along. One of the big things that I pay attention to now when I look at properties, and it's sometimes hard, especially like in Kansas City, is I look at how big is the yard? Is the yard big in the front and the back? How many trees are around that property that could potentially land on the house and damage the roof or the siding?
Good point.
I look into those things now because of that issue that came up. This has created another process on how I look at properties and how I underwrite a deal. Like, what could be my potential issues here? Oh, there's a lot of trees. All right, that could potentially happen. That could cost me $1,500 to $2,000 for that tree falling. And you learn these issues over time.
Something else that I've talked to owners about, especially, I don't know if it's just for Kansas City. It's probably not, and I don't even know what the age of the property would be, but there's certain ages of properties that have this old cast iron plumbing in them, and they run all the way through the stacks, all the way out to the street where they meet the city's lines. And we get those routinely collapse. I bet we do 10 or 15 of those a year where they'll just, they're 50 years old and they just simply collapse out in the yard. And that can be a tremendous expense. I'm talking $10,000 to $15,000 to dig that up and remove that line. So I always, if I'm involved in it at all in the beginning, I encourage owners to maybe spend, I think it's $150, maybe $250, I don't recall, to have that line scoped. Hammer that line to see what condition this thing is in. Does it have tree roots growing through it? It would save you a lot of heartache in the long run.
Well, it's going to give you some clear understanding of what's going on with it, so that you're not surprised if something does happen. Yeah. You're
doesn't mean you don't buy it, but you
that doesn't mean you don't
go into it with your eyes open.
Yeah, we just went through that with my new investor student Stan.
Oh yeah,
who just closed on that property in Garfield.
I talked to him yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I talked to him. Seems like a nice guy.
Did you? Yeah, he's great. I'm so excited for him. It's interesting. He picked up that property. It was a 3-1, like 1,200 square feet. And I think he got it for $115. And then we did a sewer scope and there was issues. And then we got another $5,000 credit.
Interesting.
And he's just going to monitor it. He got it jetted and cleaned out. And so he's good there, but he's aware of what's going on because we did that sewer scope.
But do you know how many people don't do that? I mean, what you're advising your customers is unique. I mean, it truly is. There's very few customers that I see that will do that. And it's so important. Like I said, it doesn't mean you don't buy it, but you go into it with your eyes open that, hey, at some point I may have to replace that.
Right. You're aware. And then you could budget for it.
Exactly.
If you can kind of start that budget, just knowing that potentially it could fail.
Right.
Yeah. He's really excited. And that property turned out really good. Like the outside, I thought it was funny because he had the whole outside done. And he did ground cover, and he wanted lights underneath his kitchen cabinets. And the contractor called me and goes, "Yeah, I think he's going a little overboard." I'm like, "There's small things. Let him. He has to go through his own journey as well."
But you know how exciting is that to see a guy like that? It's just real exciting to see a guy like that. When I was talking to him, like I say, it was yesterday or the day before, you could just hear the excitement in his voice. I mean, he's got his first property, he's going. So I told our staff, I said, "Hey, take care of this guy. Let's you always want to make it a good experience. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is you have a guy buy a property and he has a bad experience. That's just horrible. It's
Yeah, especially in the
exciting
very
to
beginning.
me to see guys like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know what was crazy? He was referred to me by a friend, and I think his parents had both passed, and all the sons had came into money, and his job wasn't doing the greatest, and he's like, look, I want to put this money to work. I want to start investing, and I took him on as a student, and fast forward a few months, and his buddy, we talk all the time, and he said, oh my gosh, Stan is just completely changing the way he thinks about things. He's thinking about his finances and investing, and that has been just an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
And I think what's been really cool is when I took him on, I said, look, I'm here to help you, guide you through buying your first property, and also explain to you all the things that went wrong for me.
Yeah.
All the bad things I've gone through. And one of the biggest ones was property management. I told them in the beginning, I said, look, you've come into this at a great period as far as buying, because I've had 4 property managers out in Kansas City, 4, and left them all. And then you guys acquired the last one that we had, and I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't read an owner statement. Every month we were trying to figure out money, and it drained me. And the reason why it drained me is that is not where I want to spend my time at all.
You can't be buying properties if you're spending time trying to figure out what's going on with the ones you got.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I told this to Stan, and, I introduced him to you guys. You jumped on the phone with him. And what it did was it put him in a position. I also, connected him with my contractor. So he's got all these people in place to make him successful, and also give him confidence. And he doesn't have to worry about this part. And he's come back and said the same thing. He's like, look, I feel so much more confident that I have your property management company, your contractor, your attorney,
right,
your CPA, and I'm just piggybacking off you. And it's great. That property's on the same side of the street that we have ours. We're like 6 doors down. So we already knew what we could rent it out for. So it's been great to watch him grow. And we have a few more coming.
But it's good that your clients have that resource yourself to draw on. Not everybody buying properties has that resource. When I first started doing it, again back in '87, I didn't have anybody. I remember we bought 2 fourplexes in foreclosure. I was taught through this book to go to a bank, see if they had any foreclosures. They did. I bought them from them. They financed them because I didn't have much money. So that they financed them. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So if you came in as a tenant and you had $600 deposit, I'd move you in. It was literally that crazy. And I did not know what I was doing. I had so many bad tenants in these things, and just, you just learn. If I had somebody like yourself guiding me of, hey, you don't want to do this, I probably could have saved a lot of mistakes and money.
Yeah, and I've learned over the years too, is I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I do not want to do is I cannot stand bookkeeping. Period. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't even want to look at it. I have my bookkeeper. All I want to know on a monthly basis where the numbers are at, what's going on. That's all. Just give me a 5 to 10 minute briefing and let me go on with my day. Like, that's really how I want to be. And it's for me, it's important because I really want to stay focused on the things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
And I think I think there's probably some investors, if they have a smaller portfolio, that could probably manage everything on their own.
Yeah.
Probably can be done. I can't with the amount of properties we have. It's just too much. Things are coming from left to right, and there's one thing after another, or project going. So
the problem with managing the properties yourself, I don't even manage my properties. I don't touch them. I don't have anything to do with them. They're in our system. They're managed by our staff. I don't approve the application. I don't do anything with them because if I do, I'm going to make a mistake. because your heart starts to get in your way. And
Yes.
it's a huge mistake. I've made that mistake so many times because we're all human. Everybody wants to help one another. But at the end of the day, it's a business and it needs to be run as a business. So I stay out of it. I stay out of my own properties.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I've noticed, well, I know this for a fact that I'm a very trusting
Yeah.
person, and I, connect with somebody and I just want to trust them. I want them to be on my team and
Right.
work together. And that it sometimes just doesn't work out that way. And I think that's why I kind of have to, back out of things and let other people
Yeah.
do what they need to do. So I have a question for you regarding systems and how you deal with landlords as far as owner statements
Mm-hmm.
and the communication part and the emailing. This is a big component of why you guys are really good at what you do. And it's, if there's an issue on a property, I get an email. Tells me the
Right.
address, tells me the issue, and it's either I'm going to take care of it, call my handyman, and they're going to take care of it, or you guys are going to get a bid on it, and then we communicate really quick. And also, the owner statements are much easier to deal with through your software. Now, like, how long did it take you to get to this point?
Oh, that
Is
was a
it to
long,
kind of
that was a long run.
okay?
The statements that we send out are customized. We use our software that we use is Rent Manager. We had Rent Manager. We've been using them now for I think 7 years, 8 years. But we had them customize a statement that we wanted a certain way. Our statement has, I believe, 5 or 6 sections in it. One section is the first section is a summary of all the properties, of all the income, all the expenses. So if you have multiples, that first section is everything all together. Some owners, that's all they want to care about. They want to look at how much money did I make, how much money went out. They just want to see that in summary. And then there's a section that's broke out by property. Some owners want to see that detail. They want to know what each unit made. So we have that on the statement. And then we have a section on the statement of paid bills for that period of time. And then another section of unpaid bills, bills that are pending to be paid. And then there's a section of a rent roll. Actually, at the bottom of the statement is a rent roll that goes out with every single statement. So there's these sections that we had custom developed that we learned over the years that owners wanted to see. We would send out a statement and they'd say, hey, I'd like to see a rent roll. Well, we have to send them a rent roll now. Or we'd send them a statement and they say, can you break that down by property? Well, now we got to send them another statement. So we've developed this over the years. And to be frank, I mean, we have some owners who think it's too busy. It's too busy of a statement. And if you have a lot of properties, it can be a large statement. But again, in my view, the data is important. It's there for information for you at least. And we do the same thing at the end of the year. We'll send a summary to every owner by unit so that they can give to their accountant to do their taxes.
Let's stop right there. Let's just stop right there, because this is huge. For new investors, when you start to buy properties, one of the biggest things your CPA is going to want to know is they want to understand that you've got all your gross rents, your repairs separated per property.
Right.
Like, they want to break it down that way. They don't want you to send them a profit and loss that has all these numbers on it, but it's all your properties in one. They do not like that. So you want to make sure that the property management company you have, that these statements can be broken up into per property.
Yeah.
It's huge when getting your taxes done. I've learned that lesson a couple times, because they get confused. And then what they end up doing is the CPA will just be like, well, okay, I'm just going to break it in half, and I'm going to give you some here and some there. But that's not really the right way to do it.
No, you really want to know what property's performing, especially as your portfolio grows. There may be a property for whatever reason. Maybe it's maintenance. Maybe it's the management company. Maybe it's the area it's located in. It could be a variety of things, but maybe there's a property that just isn't performing. And maybe you want to offload that property. I mean, so you definitely want them broke down by property. But that's one of the things I learned over the years, which is why we did it that way. Is owning property myself, I knew that, hey, my accountant doesn't want it all in one lump sum. They want to know by property.
Yeah, I learned that over time, and it's interesting. I think the last few companies that we were with didn't do that,
Yeah.
and so we're finishing up 2022's taxes, right? Because they had an extension, so they're doing, and they were asking that. I say, well, look, our new property management company, I know, does it the correct way, but we're just working through the bad issues that we had from the past.
Yeah.
It's
our relationship with the
man.
owners isn't just the property management the way I view it. It's the taxes. It's everything. So at the end of the year, our job's not done. On January 1st or 2nd, we will send out to every owner a summary. Usually it's a 2 or 3 page summary broken out by property again, so that they can give to their accountant. So they'll have that and the 1099 all in one email, and all they got to do is send that to their accountant. And as far as we're concerned, they're done. The only additional piece to that would be is their taxes and insurance and mortgage if they got.
Yes. I got a question. It just came to my mind. So you have a new investor that's looking out in, let's say, Kansas City. When they contact you, what should they be utilizing you for at that moment while they're looking to buy properties? Should they be contacting you about a particular location, a street that they're looking to buy on? Because we all know that once you start to invest, that you could have one property that could perform really well in one location, and you can go 3 blocks over, and it can be a completely different scenario. So, and because you guys are on the ground, what should that new investor be doing in conjunction with working with you in the very beginning? Like, what kind of information could you help provide them?
Well, we do this all the time. I actually do it myself because, again, I communicate with all the owners out of the gate. So I did one yesterday. Somebody's looking at a property and they wanted to know what it would rent for. Great question, right? We want to know what that property is going to rent for. So I ran them a rent comp and sent it over to them. So we do those all the time, rent comps. That's the primary thing we probably help them with is, what is this property going to rent for? Do you manage in that area is a good question. But yeah, if owners want to call or email me, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, it's a big part of it too. I use Rent-A-Meter.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay. You do?
I have found
is that what your whole team?
Yes. We've used Rent-A-Meter and we've used Zillow. I just personally think Rent-A-Meter is more accurate because it actually spits out the data it's comparing it to. It doesn't just give you a number of this is going to rent for $1,300, let's say. Rent-A-Meter actually tells you it's going to rent for $1,300, and here's the 10 comparisons I have that I came up with that number for. That's why I like it, because I don't need just a number. I need to know, where did you come up with that?
Well, also it shows the mapping of where those properties are at.
And you can drill it down you can change your radius, because just speaking of Kansas City, I'm sure other markets are similar, but if you pull a radius of 3 miles in Kansas City, that's huge.
It's like 3 different markets.
That's exactly right. And you could have a rent quote that is way off. Could be low, could be high. So you need to narrow that down to maybe a half a mile or a mile at the most to see now what's it going to rent for. That's why I like it.
Yeah, my rule of thumb, and I do this just comping properties to sell as well, is I go a quarter. I literally try to keep it right around the house. If I can find the right numbers in the very beginning, quarter mile, great. Then I move on. But if I need to go a little further out, I will. And then I'll Google Map and look at the location. And then I'll call my agent. And then I'll follow up with my property manager and get that that big
Right.
picture of what's going on, because they're on the ground. They know those
Yeah.
locations. They could tell me, well, 2 streets over, it's really good, but that
Right.
street's pretty rough.
Right.
It's probably not going to perform the
Yeah.
same way as the streets 2 over. And it makes a huge,
Absolutely. I've seen some
huge
numbers on
difference.
Zillow that I look at and go, where in the world did this rent
Yeah.
come from? There's just no
Yeah.
way.
It's insane. Yeah. And then the investor buys that property expecting that money, and they've underwrote that deal based on those numbers, and all of a sudden it sits.
Yeah, and that's the shame of it all.
That's a big issue.
Because, that one property that's going to sit vacant for 6 months, and then all of a sudden now they're going to come down $200 or $300, and they're upside down now on the property. That's just a shame.
Yeah, we ran some issues end of May 2022 when the rates started going up. We still had some projects pending that we were working on, and we had ran numbers, at a different interest rate, and we're in hard money, doing the construction on them. We have, I think, 2-3 properties that break even.
Yeah.
Like they're just barely, we're just holding on to them because we just like,
there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, as long as, if you're getting the appreciation, if you're getting some appreciation on it, and you can also
principal pay down.
It's like I always looked at it as an annuity. I've got the tenants paying an annuity for me, and if I'm breaking even, that's to me it was okay. You don't want to break even on everything, but it's still okay. The other thing that especially in today's world that investors want to look at is taxes. Taxes in the county that we're in right now,
property taxes
have gone sky high.
Oh my gosh. Jackson County?
Jackson County. Oh my goodness.
Oh, but what's so crazy about that whole scenario? My contractor brought this up. He's like, oh, Jackson County is going crazy. And immediately I started stressing out and started pulling all of them. But something we did notice, and I didn't even know this, I just found this out, but we have a big bulk of our properties in Blue Hills. And Blue Hills is in a tax abatement area. And where we found that out was on Stan's property on Garfield, because we have one on Garfield and we have them all over that little particular location. And yeah, they have a tax abatement program going there. I'm like, oh, we got saved. And I noticed that it's different in Blue Hills to Manheim, like the taxes, are they going to cap that out? Like, what is
I don't know.
What's the deal
I
with
keep
that?
hearing stories of, I know I've got some of my properties that literally doubled in taxes. I don't, and I don't personally have a problem with the taxes themselves, but to me, they ought to have a maximum amount that could go up in a year versus just 100%. I mean, I can't double my revenue with the signature on a piece of paper. So it just makes it hard. And, I think folks lose sight of what we're trying to do. Us as investors, we're trying to, not only build a portfolio for ourselves and a better life for the future, you're also trying to provide good housing for people. I mean,
that's the big part of it.
And we're not just here trying to make money. You're trying to provide decent housing for people. And I think sometimes people look at us as investors wrong.
Yeah, most of the time, especially Jackson County.
Yeah.
Wow, that was crazy during COVID. Like there was just, my gosh.
That day will be a day I'll never forget. I remember when they came out that businesses were being shut down unless you were, what they call it, essential. If you weren't an essential business. The problem is nobody said what an essential business was. So I went home and told my wife, I said, we've worked 35 years to build this company into what it is. And I said, I think we might be done. I said, for everything I'm hearing is we are finished. We're over. And what a scary thought. That was horrifying thought there for a while.
That was an interesting time period. And now I look back, I mean, we were picking up properties from contractors that were, building out a property to use for like an Airbnb. And then they were stressed out. They're not going to be able to do an Airbnb. So we would buy it. And we'd pick up another property and get a really great deal. And all of a sudden the tenant doesn't want to move out,
Right.
and she gets an attorney, and
Oh, yeah.
she's, they're locking arms at Jackson County Courthouse. It was just
insane.
insane.
Yeah, it was insane, but by the end of the year of 2020 and even 2021, I wouldn't have gave you a nickel that it would have been a successful year. But we actually wound up doing very well. And then therefore the investors, for the most part, did pretty good. We didn't have the mass numbers of tenants that were not paying like we were afraid we're going to. We took a little bit of a different approach. Again, keeping in mind in our view that the tenants are our customers too. Instead of taking a real aggressive approach, we tried to be a little more soft key with that and say, look, we all are in this together. The owners have to have money in order to pay the mortgage. If they can't pay the mortgage, the property goes in foreclosure. You're going to have to move anyway, right? So let's work together. And it worked out pretty good. Now, we had a few that basically said, "To heck with you, we're not going to pay," but not.
I think every investor had a couple,
but not as many as I thought we would. Really.
Yes, especially in the very beginning when there was a lot of talk of what potentially could happen.
Yeah, everybody was saying, "Don't pay your rent. You shouldn't pay your rent. All these landlords are millionaires. They don't need the money. Just stop paying."
Boy, do they have that wrong.
Yeah.
Boy, did they have that wrong. We had one in Kansas City that we had an issue with, I think, and she stayed in that property for like a year. Until we figured out, an agreement.
Right.
But I had another one in Michigan, and she got into the property, I think March of 2020. That's when her lease started.
Oh wow, bad time.
And then she lost her job, and I didn't know that the property management company was being pretty aggressive with her. Like, I didn't know this, but we're putting all these fees and late fees and just being super aggressive. And then one day I get a phone call, and this guy says, "Is this Stephen Husted?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing out here in Harper Woods." And I'm like, "Are you cold calling me? I'm not selling." He's like, "No, I know what you're doing in Harper Woods, and you better stop, or else I'm going to burn your house down."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, and the crazy thing in the very beginning of this, I forgot, this is the crazy part. In the very beginning of the conversation, what he said to me was, he told me my address and who I was married to.
Oh, your personal address? Oh, yes. That's scary.
You know what it reminded me of? And I called my property management right after. Do you ever see the movie The Town?
Yeah.
Remember when they go to the Fenway?
Yeah.
And they knock on the thing and they start naming off where they live with the names. Exactly that. And my property management company did not understand what I was saying to them. I go, he's threatening me. He knows exactly where I live. He knows I'm married and he knows I have a daughter. And he's basically saying, if I don't stop charging this tenant, he's going to burn the house down. I still have that message and that number saved on my phone. Yeah.
Well, we were told in the county that we couldn't charge late fees anyway, so we stopped that immediately. It does no good to charge late fees if somebody's having trouble paying the rent anyway. So our view is let's just try to get the principal collected and not worry about it. So we did pretty good. I don't remember the numbers, but I think for the most part I think we ended up about 3% of our tenants we had trouble with. But for
about 3%, that's not
bad. Now, if you were into 3%, it was bad, but but overall it wasn't bad. Plus, the other crazy thing that happened in 2020 and 2021, and even this year, 22 and 23, is rents went up. Rents were going up. It was a phenomenal thing to see. For the last 3 years, I mean, we've been raising rents about 7 to 8%. And sometimes we get
and break that down. Why did you see such a huge spike?
Well,
Is it? Are we talking just
It's a
supply and
supply and
demand? Does
demand.
it really come down to that,
It
or
really
jobs,
is
or like
it
what are you
was a
seeing?
supply and demand issue. There was more demand than there were properties out there. And then with the taxes were going up, insurance is going up, interest rates going up, inflation, right? So
Pretty much.
unfortunately, then the rates had to go up as well. I saw a deal on TV the other night, and they were talking about landlords, and they were criticizing the huge increases, as they were labeling them, on the rent increases. But what they failed to mention is why. What caused that? If you just look at it on the surface, it sounds like these millionaire property managers again are just trying to put more money in their pocket, when in fact, they're just trying to keep the same amount of money in their pocket that they had last year. But all of a sudden, the taxes have doubled, interest rates have gone up significantly, in some cases doubled. So you got to make up that difference somewhere. So that was a large part of it, is just supply and demand and the economy.
Everybody would. I mean, look, you could go get a cup of coffee and it's gone
Right.
up in price. Everything was going up, and rents had to as well. Do you think we're hitting a
Not yet.
wall? I'm just
Not yet.
choosing Kansas. I'm just going to choose Kansas
Yeah,
City
not
since
yet.
that's
We
where I'm
keep a
at. But
very, very close eye
not yet.
on it. Our office manager did a round of rent increases, and I think she jumped them 7%, maybe 8. I can't remember. And they keep an eye on the vacancy rates. That's the big key. Is we don't want to get above about a 3 to 4% vacancy rate. I think we're running 3% vacant right now, company wide, and that includes St. Louis, which is about 12% vacant. St. Louis is much larger vacancy than Kansas City. So if you took, yeah,
Oh, really?
it's a harder market than Kansas City.
In what way?
We struggle in St. Louis with collections. It seems to be just a market that is much more difficult to do collections than we have in Kansas City. We just don't, and the getting the properties ready, and frankly, too, maintenance in St. Louis is a struggle. We have a very difficult time in St. Louis finding folks who will work on maintenance for a good wage and provide a good product. In Kansas City, we really don't have that problem.
Do you think big part of is
Yeah,
jobs? I think Kansas City has a lot of different sectors that people can work in.
yeah, yeah. I
Would
think
that be
so.
a fair? Yeah, I've noticed that out in Michigan and Detroit. Sometimes I just wonder, I'm like, where are
Yeah,
people working to pay for these types of
yeah,
rents? And there's so many different. Well, here's a good example. We have a cabin out in the Smokies, and that whole area, as far as tourism or these cabins, it's a business, and everybody around the area works in it, and so they know the drill. They had the family. One is
yeah,
cleans the cabins. The husband could be the
yeah,
handyman. The son could be a landscaper. One could be an electrician. They know what they're doing, and they know it's a business, and it's another market, I would say, that is ran well,
yeah,
very well, compared to others. And I think others, like you're bringing up St. Louis or say Detroit, it's like the
yeah,
wild west in a lot of ways. It's hard to find good contractors you can trust, or handyman that you can trust, or just anybody in general. And it's hard if you don't have massive amount of people, boots on the ground, that can help support things. You kind of have to lean and watch people make
yeah.
mistakes. And
Yeah,
yeah,
we've been in St. Louis.
it's different. Every market has its unique
Yeah, we've been in
challenges.
St. Louis now for 7 years, and we've got a very good divisional manager there now. And again, that's key. The personnel is the key. It doesn't matter what I want to do and what I think and how I want to run it. It's irrelevant. It matters that those people that are on the boots on the ground is what matters. And we've got a good group now, so I think we're going to turn it around. We've got a good maintenance group, so I see bright things on the future. You're talking about the working on every aspect of the property. I mean, that's how we started this stuff. I mean, I would paint, I would clean, I did everything I was the worst painter in the world too, but I mean, I did everything on these properties. Um, so, and we've tried everything. We've done short-term rentals. We did short-term rentals in Orlando for several years. It
How'd that
actually
go?
went very well. My daughter, who works in our company, was running it. But we shut it down in 2020, March or April of 2020, when President Trump shut down the international travel. It killed it. It killed that entire market down there. So we shut that operation down. We plan on doing short-term rentals again in the Panama City market because we know how
Yeah,
it
smart.
works now. But at that particular time, it was going well until that all happened.
That's good to know. Good to know about the
Yeah.
short term out in Florida. It's perfect. So I would say that one thing that a new investor can take away from today's episode is your boots on the ground are the key
Absolutely.
to success.
Oh,
Would you
absolutely.
agree?
They are it. They're 100% it.
Yeah, you have to nail that, and it
Yeah.
might take time, but once you get it correct, you'll definitely sleep better.
And that's
at
what
night.
I was talking about earlier, and that I've mentioned that I don't claim that we have all this figured out, that we're sitting back with our feet on the table and saying, "Look at us go." I mean, we make mistakes. We still make mistakes, but I've got good people on the ground who have the same philosophy that if they make a mistake, they're going to own up to it and make it right and not make. What I tell them is, don't make the mistake twice. We all make mistakes. That's right.
Try
Try
not
not
to.
to make that same mistake twice. Learn from it. Let the owner know what happened. Most owners just want honesty. They just want to know what's going on. And owners know when they're being snowed. So don't even try it. Don't even try to make up a story on something. Just tell them what happened.
Absolutely, be very transparent. It's the best way to be. 100%. And I feel like some get it, and some don't. I really appreciate you making the time to come on to the podcast and give some insights for a new investor that wants to start building out their portfolio out of state. I think that today's episode, you gave a lot of great information, and I'll definitely in the notes be putting all your information
Great.
so that if anybody was looking to basically jump into the Kansas City market, St. Louis, Florida, that they could definitely reach out to you and take it from there. So I really appreciate your time today, Jim, and I look forward to building my
Yeah, I do
portfolio
too.
out even more
I
so with
appreciate
you.
the opportunity. I could talk about this stuff all day long. I'm kind of a nerd about this real estate stuff. So
I've noticed that. Every time we've had a conversation, I'm like, I gotta stay away from Jim, man. That guy will
well,
I'll end up spending an hour with him
I've
on the
got one
phone.
guy that calls and talks to me. He's out of San Diego, and we get to talking about taxes. And I was like, man, we'll be here all day long if we're going to talk about this.
Yeah. So, all right, Jim. Well, thanks a lot for
Thank you,
joining
Steve. I
today. I really
appreciate it.
appreciate it. All
Thanks.
right,
Bye.
take care.